Everybody, it is Tuesday night, and this is Vetted VA Live, where we get together every week with vetted pros and go through topics of interest to VA home buyers, home owners, home sellers. So tonight we're going to have a little bit of a twist for you. We usually have a panel of both mortgage and real estate experts. We were supposed to have 3 real estate professionals with us tonight, but due to some weather in where is it in Tennessee? So some bad weather in Tennessee. We only have 2 vetted real estate pros with us tonight. But you guys have seen them before, got great information. We're going to kind of take a little bit of a different approach tonight and look at it really from the realtor side and let these 2 ladies walk us through what you should know, want to know, need to know to make the best decisions, whether it's buying or selling real estate. So with that, Claudia Morales, you are here in Southern California in the Apple Valley area, but you cover most of the Inland Empire. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Perfect. So we've got the California perspective, and we've got Sam Rubin with us from Richardson, Texas. Haven't had you on for a while, Sam, so I'm glad to have you here. Let's just jump right into it, and let's start with what are the essential qualities that an agent should have. So a veteran looking for an agent to list their home, to help them find a home. Claudia, what are some of the things that you think our vetted members or our vetted VA members should be looking at when looking to hire a realtor?
I think it's important to realize that the VA loan is a very specific loan type. Not everybody qualifies for that, and not everybody does transactions that involve a VA loan. So I would say most importantly is to find a realtor who has that experience. I know sometimes there's classes out there, but really somebody who's put in the work to learn the ins and out of the VA loan and has experience to back that up. I think that's of the utmost importance.
And when someone here, a vetted VA member, anyone watching this out on YouTube sees that, what advice would you give them on what's the best way for them to find out the level of experience that a realtor has with the VA loan program?
I would say, I mean, nowadays, if you're a realtor or a lender, you pretty much have a social media presence, at least you should. So it's easy to do some research into their background, see what they're into, like who do they serve most, first and foremost. You can also check out reviews. A lot of people have Google reviews, Zillow reviews, all of those things. And if there's a big list and you've narrowed it down, call them and ask them some questions about your VA loan, about your specific situation. Depending on how they answer, that's how you're going to find out if they know what they're talking about or not.
Absolutely. And I would say it's funny on the mortgage side, it is a unique program for us to do, but I will say I don't know that I've ever come across a lender that will say, "Oh, I don't know VA." It's like every lender, "Oh, it's a loan. It's just like any of the others," which it's not. It's flexible, it's unique, but there are a lot of fun parts to it. But I would say on the realtor side, it's probably more common for a realtor to go, "Hey, I'm selling a house. I'm still going to have appraisal. I'm going to have a home inspection. I'm using the same contracts. It's not a completely different thing." Sam, would you say that's pretty accurate, that most realtors are going to think there's not a whole lot of specific or unique knowledge that they should have to represent a VA buyer?
Yes, I do agree with that. A lot of agents do not do VA loans and they don't understand them. They don't know the guidelines. So asking those questions up front will prevent them from having issues once they get under contract or start the buying process or selling process.
Absolutely. And besides asking, just, hey, how many veterans have you represented using their VA benefit? Any other suggestions that you would have for uncovering the level of experience that a realtor has?
You can ask for references. So if they've worked with veteran buyers or sellers before, they can ask to speak to people that they've worked with before. I always tell people to do that anyway because you'll get real, life experiences from those who they've worked with. Also, just um, asking them specific questions, like Claudia said, in regards to VA loans. Hey, what's the lowest credit score we can have? Do they do just to ask, quizzing them to make sure that they know what they're talking about. Because it's okay for you to know stuff, but in order for them to be the expert for you, they need to know more than you, just as much or more.
And especially in light of, we went, I think it was probably about a month ago, we did an episode here of the show just about getting your VA offer accepted. We had a little dip last fall, but other than that, we're kind of back to this crazy strong market where a lot of properties have multiple offers. And there are still some misconceptions among listing agents representing sellers and the sellers themselves on the VA loan. That's where your realtor is really invaluable. As a lender, I get to talk a little bit with the listing agent on the front end, but your realtor representing you has direct interaction with them, whether it's a phone call, emails, presenting the offer, and has the ability to do all the things that we talked about on that episode to present your offer and the VA financing in the most positive light. And I know I can speak for you too, because I can speak for every vetted pro on here. It is the most flexible loan program out there. Sellers should be lining up to accept VA offers, but without a realtor on the front line handling that communication, it can be a little bit tough. Claudia, let's talk about this. One of the things that I know you guys get, that I get, someone says, I'm thinking about buying a house. I'm not ready to talk to a realtor just yet. How early is too early to talk to a realtor? And in a perfect world, what does that conversation look like for you? When does it start? What are you talking about? What are you helping that potential buyer or seller even to determine and figure out what's the best course for them?
That's really going to depend on the individual. I can tell you, I did an event recently, and somebody did say, they're a few years out from buying. So I told them that they should join Vetted VA. Go ahead and ask any of the questions that you might not want to ask a realtor, because you don't want to feel like you're being sold to, or or you're obligated to use that person. You just want some general info. So being part of this group, I would say, is really the first step to getting those questions answered. But then when you want something more specific to your situation and your locality, then I would reach out to either the realtor or the lender. I know that's sometimes a topic of conversation, is who do you call first, the lender or the realtor? And I would say we work hand in hand. We're going to direct you to a loan professional, and when you talk to them first, they're going to direct you to us, because we're handling the actual transaction, not just the loan. So I would say it depends on where you're at in that. If you're someone that has concerns about your credit, you probably want to start a little bit earlier than you need to, just so that you can start troubleshooting those issues and get yourself prepared to get that pre-approval and go out shopping.
That's really great advice. I mean, the forum is the perfect place for someone that's kind of early entry, that they're 6, 12, 24 months out. There's no pressure. You don't even have to ask your own questions. Someone's asked your question. You can search for it. You can just watch what people are asking on a day-to-day basis. You can see what other buyers have going through their heads and how the pros are interacting with them and answering those questions. Sam, from your perspective, what is the benefit to a buyer of reaching out to you, say 6 months ahead of time? I know from my perspective, I tell people I would rather talk to you first 6 months before, because there's kind of some checklists, some housekeeping items that we can do up front to make sure you're really ready. But from the real estate perspective, what are you doing if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I'm going to buy the first of the year. It's July. We just passed 4th of July. I want to buy at the beginning of 2024. What are the benefits of having that conversation with you now?
The benefits of talking to a realtor prior to you being ready to buy a home is because they can get you set up in the system, let you start seeing how the market is going. We can set you up in the areas of interest. We can show you the pricing that is going on in the area. We can give you the school districts. You can kind of see what is going on within the market. So then a lot of the questions that people have are like, oh, is this still a multiple offer situation? How fast are the houses leaving the market? When we set you up in our system to receive those properties, for you to view, you can see this stuff. So you can see, oh, this went pending in 24 hours. This went pending in 4 hours. This one stayed on the market 30 days because of the location. You can see just as much information just from getting those listings from us as we can. Also, it better prepares us, because it's like we're not in a rush to try to find you something when you have 30 days to be out of a property. And you're stressed and we're stressed because we're now in a multiple offer situation. So I can't get you in this house in 30 days like you want because we're in multiple offer situations in the different cities. And now you're mad at me because your offers are not getting picked. And you're down to a 2 week time frame. And now you got to move into a hotel because you got out of your lease too soon. So speaking with the agent well beyond the time frame that you're looking to buy is a benefit to not just you, but the people that you're working with as well. It keeps your stress levels low.
So let's talk about something, Sam. How common for you? So we got Texas and California, so two of the bigger markets in the country covered here. In Texas, how big are buyers' representation agreements? Is it something that you use? Is it something a buyer should expect to come across when talking to agents?
So, buyer rep agreements in Texas is not required, just highly recommended. Most of our brokerages do require it at some time during the transaction. So, any event that you're in Texas and somebody says you have to sign this to work with me, that is how they run their business. I do my business kind of different. Not all the time do I have a buyer sign a buyer rep agreement up front. Sometimes it's signed after we go see a few properties and write the first contract. But it all depends on how that agent runs their business. But to let you guys in Texas know, they are not required. Highly recommended. Depending on the time frame that the agent chooses to put in their buyer rep agreement is going to be dependent upon the time frame that you all have with that agent. They can choose 30 days, 60 days, 1 year. I've seen them be longer than that. But it's every agent gets to choose how they want to use the buyer rep agreements in their business. But they are
And,
popular here in Texas.
and how does that contrast to our market here in California, Claudia?
I think there are similarities. They're also not required here, but I would say that's also either a brokerage policy or just like Sam said, how the agent does their business. Me personally, I am of the thought that if you want to work with me, you're going to work with me. If you just wanted to see the one house, then maybe I'll have you sign something like that, or maybe I'll just show it to you. And, it really just depends on the agent. I don't like to pressure people into making a commitment that they're not ready to. Um, but at the same time, I know that for some agents who do use them, it's because they've been burned before, where they've taken a buyer out because that buyer's agent was on vacation or wherever that person was. They weren't able to accommodate their buyer at that time. So I can see both sides of it, and it's going to be an individual agent's how they do their business. So me personally, I don't require them. I don't use them. And really, when you're representing a military family, it's kind of void because they're not going to pay you the commission that is written on the buyer broker agreement. So
Can I jump
And
in real quick to that? So I do want to put this out there for you buyers that are looking to buy in certain states where they have buyer rep agreements, but they're not required. Now, I have been in situations where a buyer can pay cash or they can use their VA loan. If you tell your agent that you have options and they don't specify what you're using on that buyer rep agreement, and you tell them that you're going in and you're about to offer on cash on a house, they will come after you for their commission. I've had it happen. You have some agents like that. If they know you got big money, they're going to come after you if you choose to not use them and they have you sign that buyer rep agreement. So, to Claudia's point, yes, if you're using a VA loan and it's stated in your buyer rep agreement that that's what you're using, you're good. If you're using conventional cash and or VA loan, you might want to check the buyer rep agreement before you sign it because they will come after you for that commission. I've had it happen. It happens.
well, maybe give us some more detail. As from my end, I don't deal with that a whole heck of a lot. What is included in this buyer's representation agreement? What details are in there? How does it benefit you as a realtor? How does it benefit them as a buyer? And is there anything else, any other pitfalls that they should look out in there? I know I just asked you guys like 15 questions at once. The last one I have, is this exclusive? Is this saying that you're the only person that can represent me in terms of buying any property, or is it exclusive to an individual individual property. So Claudia, I can reiterate any of the 15 questions I just threw out there, but you get the gist of where I'm going with it.
Yeah. So in California, I mean, our forms we used to have several different forms. If you're not exclusive, you're exclusive, but now we have one that is encompassing, and it is an exclusive agreement. And it asks you, is it for a certain time frame, price range? Is it for a specific property? And then it addresses compensation. How is the buyer broker going to be paid? So it has all of those details in there. It really just depends on that agent and how much time they put in there. I mean, I've received some. I've done one for just one or two properties. If it was somebody that I just met off of Zillow and they wanted to go on this weekend, and so it could be one property, it could be a time frame. It just really depends on what's written in there. And as a buyer, I would read that and make sure that those terms you're comfortable with. If you just want to try them out for 30 days and see what happens, you can do that. If you just want them to show you a couple of properties that weekend, just to see how you vibe with each other, maybe that's not the agent for you, you can do that too. So don't just let the agent write in everything. Make sure that you're reading through and make sure that you're comfortable with what you're signing.
Perfect. Let's transition over to, so say you've interviewed an agent, you found a great agent, you went through the buyer's representation agreement, you're ready to get out and start writing some offers on this. Let's go back. During COVID, people were having a hard time of seeing homes. So lots of buyers were buying homes out of the area, sight unseen, agents going through and doing walking tours of the property. Well, with veteran buyers, especially going through the PCS process, this is more common. They're not even able to go to these areas. Do you want to talk, Sam, a little bit about the process of potentially buying a home sight unseen, potential pitfalls, things that you do with your VA clients who maybe don't have the ability to come and look at properties in the area that they're going to buy?
Yes, buying homes sight unseen, even with video, is still not the same as you walking through it, being able to see the neighborhoods and stuff like that. So you really have to trust your agent to be able to make this property seem the way it would be if you were walking through the home. So things that I do is I do not do FaceTime because you cannot, review those. So I record the videos and I walk the house from front to back, side to side, up and down. I tell them where the cracks are. I zoom in. If it has a smell, Lord Jesus, some of these houses, ooh, yeah, you walk in and there's a whiff. So you have to let them know what that smell is, whether it's dog, whether it smells like water, that the mildewed or whatever the case may be. You want your agent to describe this house, even if it is a bad house. Oh, it got, poop on the floor because I just walked through one that had poop on the floor throughout the house. So you want them to describe this property not in a way, oh, this so cute. They got updated countertops. Who cares about that? You seen that on the picture. You want to know what you can't see via the photos when they're walking these properties for you. You want to walk the outside of the house. Are there any cracks? Does the foundation look solid? You just want them to go into detail on every little piece about the property. Look underneath the sinks. What does the plumbing look like? Is it cast iron, PVC? Some people use Plex now. So there's a whole bunch of different options for the type of plumbing. And is that standard in your area? Is there a leak? Is the sink being held up by a 2x4 and they claim the house had just been remodeled? There is so much stuff I can go into where you can walk into these properties that look like they're perfect for you, that there's been disasters done. But you want your agent to call these things out, and you want to make sure you're telling your agent, hey, tell me this. Video the neighborhood. Don't just video the house, because sometimes your neighbors' houses might look like, trash, and may have trash in the backyard. And you want to know this because that affects you and it affects your property value. So
So this is a question for both of you. Have either or both of you had someone buy? I know people are writing offers that way. Have you ever had someone close and never see their home until they got the keys?
I had somebody come to my open house. It was my listing. And that was the only time they ever saw it. Their agent didn't show it to them. So what I do when I have a buyer, if they've gone out to an open house without me, I still insist on showing that property myself because I have to see what's going on with it. They don't have my expertise. They don't know what to look for, and I do. So their agent never came back to the house to show it. They didn't have a home inspection. They didn't waive it. They just didn't have it, and then they never did their final walkthrough. So that was quite a surprise.
Well, here, this wasn't really in the outline that we were talking about, but let's kind of reverse engineer that. Walk us through what they did and why that is suboptimal, and why you would not advise any of your clients or any of the Vetted VA members here watching a recording in the future, why they not go about it that way. What is the role of each one of those steps, and why is it important that you and your realtor be there for those?
Well, first of all, from the realtor point of view, there's procuring cause. So if that agent didn't show that property and only did paperwork, have they really earned their commission? There are times where some listing agents will say, if you didn't show the property, we're going to reduce your commission. That's not my policy, but I assumed that they would bring their buyer back, and they never did, because I have had buyers who do go to open houses, and then we'll go and we'll see them together. So that's always important, because when you're walking through, remember that agent is not representing you. They're assisting the seller in selling their property. So they're not going to point out any defects that they see or anything that the seller might have told them before the open house. So it's always important to have your own representation. And then, of course, always have your home inspection. I think sometimes people get confused between waiving repairs and having a home inspection. You can still have a home inspection if you say you're not going to ask for any repairs. Those two it might seem like they go hand in hand, but they're two different things. You can still have an inspection, even if it's just for your peace of mind, so you know what you're walking into. And then, of course, always do a final walkthrough. Even if you as the buyer cannot be there personally, make sure that your agent goes there and walks through the property. None of those steps were taken in this case. And by then we had already closed. I was in Mexico on vacation for my birthday. And then there was trash that hadn't been emptied. So it's one of those things where then as the buyer, you want to come back at an agent, then you need to talk to the buyer's agent and see who didn't do what they were supposed to and didn't follow the timelines. The timelines are there for a reason. And if you don't waive any of that, there's absolutely no reason why you're not following those.
And I think hopefully anyone watching here, if they haven't bought before and were unaware, it's a complex transaction. It's almost different than any other transaction. Most of us in our day-to-day life don't go through anything that's a 15 to 60-day process to buy that involves multiple steps, something that has been used extensively by someone else that may be 50, 70, 100 years old, that despite the best of your lender's efforts, your realtor's efforts, the inspector, the appraiser, everyone plays their role, but it's not perfect. It's not an assembly line of a little widget coming off. They're all one-off. They've all been treated differently, handled differently, and there's a million steps in there. And following the steps is important. And kind of going back to the beginning, we're talking about how do you select a realtor? What's important in a realtor? You need a rule follower. You need someone that knows the rules and then is capable of following. Sam, if I saw correctly, you were shaking your head yes, or nodding your head yes, that you've had a transaction where the buyer didn't get to see the property prior to receiving their keys.
Yes, I've dealt with quite a few that didn't get to see the property before going to go see their keys. But like I said, my videos are very detailed. If I know that they are not able to come view the neighborhood, etc., I drive the neighborhood. I send them, links to. I tell them go search on Facebook groups to search the neighborhood, because everybody got a neighborhood Facebook group, and they tell all the business in there. So if you want to know about your neighborhood, go on Facebook, type the neighborhood name. You'll find a group and you can figure out what's going on in that neighborhood before buying in it. Also, if they have a family member or a friend that they trust, they can come and view with me as well. We'll try to schedule times around their schedule so they can come view the property with me as well. But in the end, the decision will be on the buyer, not the person that comes, because they're the one that's going to be living in the house and paying the mortgage. But they can come and give their opinions.
Yeah, it's
Oh, I do have a story about that. So I did sell a house during COVID, and we all wore masks because in California we were still allowed to show property. And it wasn't until I did the final walkthrough that I realized that there was a cigarette smell. Because every time we went to the house, or I went to the house, my buyers were buying sight unseen. They were moving from Washington. I always had a mask on. And so I didn't realize until the final walkthrough that there was a cigarette smell. So I fixed that though.
I don't want to ask how. Was it a Febreze bomb? Did you paint
No,
the whole
actually, I
place?
had to buy an ionizer and clean the air in the whole house. I did that twice to get rid of that smell. So if you have, if you do run into something like that, always go back to your agent. Hopefully you're working with somebody who cares about making sure that they did a good job and that they want to make sure that your home buying experience was a pleasant one, and they'll fix it before you even notice.
Let's kind of transition from there. We have this here under the topic of writing an offer. So you've got out, you found a property, your realtor found a property and showed you videos of it, and you're ready to write an offer. But what I really wanted to talk about is the responsibilities, or the role and the responsibility of your agent at that point when you're ready to write the offer. And we just went through probably like 50 things that you guys said that you need to be doing up to that point. But what should a buyer be expecting, Claudia, once you guys are ready to write up an offer? You've already found the property, you've done all your due diligence, you're out in the field, you were the procuring cause, you took them to see the property. We've all agreed we're going to write up an offer. What does that process look like from there for a buyer who may not know what to expect, may have never done it before, or may have done it a long time ago?
Mm-hmm. So the first time that I write an offer with a buyer, I like to go over it in its entirety, all the forms that we're going to fill out. Of course, by this point, you already have your pre-approval, so we're not worried about financing, or if you qualify, we already know that you do. We also check over the comparable sales to see if this house is overpriced or if it's not. That also, too, though, it's going to depend on your market. I know a lot of times buyers do their own research, and something might say that the seller's overpriced by $20,000. But if we're in a market where properties are getting multiple offers, if you go in and you offer less than $20,000, you're probably not going to be considered when everybody else is offering list price or better. So I would go over the market conditions with the buyer so that they know, and then just go through the offer contracts.
And we had talked about it a little bit, just those timelines. Probably the big things in there are, what contingencies are we going to have? When are we going to remove them? For us here in California, as our
17 days.
So we've got 17 days on most of our contingencies. But how long is that contract? You're saying we're going through it. Ours is 8 pages. They keep changing it every 5 or 6 years. We get a shorter,
it's 27.
longer, with all of the other stuff. So you have the RPA, but then all of the other stuff. So 27 pages. And Sam, how does that compare for you in Texas? It's probably shocking to people who've never completed one before to say, you're going to hand me a 27-page contract and expect me to understand it, which leads back to why Claudia is saying, I'm going to go through it the first time and line by line and make sure you understand everything there. But how does that compare to your package, both the contract and all of the other disclosures and addendums that you have to deal with in Texas, Sam?
So our initial contract, the 1 to 4, is the actual contract. It's about 12 pages, and it changes every year. So every February and every September, we get something added thanks to all these lawsuits that we have. But we have additional addendums, third-party financing, HOA addendum. So it then ends up being a 27-page or more contract when submitting it to the sellers.
And from a buyer's perspective, of those 20 plus pages, depending on where you're at, and I'm going to say that's probably pretty darn consistent. We talk to a lot of realtors here on the show, a lot of different places around the country. All of these realtor associations, they have similar realtors. Their realtors get together. Someone gets sued in Florida over something. The California lawyers, the California Realtors Association lawyers are going to hear that. They're going to incorporate it. So these contracts are not identical, but they are very similar and have very similar clauses. Besides just purchase price, timelines, making people aware, what are some of the things that are really important, Sam, that a buyer look at in that contract that you want to make sure they're fully aware of?
So one item that I tell everybody, no matter what state they're in, is your financing contingency. We as agents can only do so much on our end when it comes to our contracts, but your lender, in the event that they default on their end and your contract only has so many days for your conditional approval, etc., and they default, your due diligence money, earnest money, whatever it is that they call it in your state, then becomes a liability, and you can lose those funds, and the lender is not held responsible for that. So the third party financing contingency, or any financing contingencies in any contract, you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on those timelines, because that will affect the overall picture in your overall deal. So that's the biggest one that I tell people to pay attention to. The second one would be if they're in an HOA area, which is a mandatory association district, or whatever it is that they call it in your state. You want to make sure that you have enough time to review those guidelines and make sure that you agree with them, because if not, you need to back out within a certain amount of time per that addendum, or if it's already written into the contract. Those are two of the biggest ones that I can call out. Claudia, what about you?
I would say the contingencies. I mean, we just came from a market where people were removing inspection contingencies. They were, offering over the appraised value. All of those things are very important. Your agent should be explaining the consequences of removing those and why those are in place to begin with. And I would not recommend removing any of those ever.
Absolutely. And it surprised me when we were going through that, how little our buyers understood what it all meant, like what was really at risk for them, including going back to Sam, what you were saying about the loan contingency. Like it's a pretty big deal. Once that thing is gone, you're putting your deposit at risk if you don't aren't able to deliver. And every one of those things, whether there's something on the inspection that you're not comfortable with, if you don't have the inspection contingency and you find out something horrible about the home, you can be at risk. So all of those are important. I guess sort of another take on this. What do you guys see as the biggest misconception that buyers have about the role their agent plays? Is there anything that you guys regularly, repeatedly have buyers either expect you to do or don't believe that you do that just doesn't match up with reality? Kind of an example that I have, like for us on the loan side, we always get, or often get, that buyers are relying on us to tell them what they can afford. I can tell them what they can qualify for. And we have to go through that distinction regularly of here's what you qualify for. Only you know what you can afford. Maybe you run off to Vegas every weekend and gamble away all your money. I don't know what you can afford. I know what you can qualify for. In terms of working with buyers, do you have anything similar where they have an exception or an expectation of you as a realtor that doesn't quite match up with what you guys do?
So one thing that I see in this group a lot, that I don't like, is they say they work for you. They do what you say. Yeah, we work with you. Okay, we are a partnership.
Partners.
Okay, I'm not your kid that you can tell me to go run and sit over there. We are a partnership, and we work together in this, you know, contract. Example. Um, Many of them will be like, "Oh, I need you to do this." You can ask us, and then we'll do it, but don't tell us, because we're not your children. We are here to work with you, and we're not, many of us, the good ones, are not trying to work against you. We're just giving you our opinion and
Mhm.
our experience based off of market and, etc. So when they try to tell us certain things, instead of asking or getting opinions from us, it can be taken a certain way. One thing that I will say is, when it comes to them making a decision on a house, they're always like, "Well, what's your opinion?" To be honest with you, we're going to give you facts based off of market analysis, and then other facts pertaining to the property. When it comes to our opinion about a property, I can't tell you if I like this house because I'm not the one paying the mortgage, right? I
Mhm.
might love it, you might hate it. You might love a house that I might not like, but everybody has their own version of what they see and what they want in a property. So expecting us to tell you, yes, this is your property, etc. Don't do that. Just ask us the facts about the property, which is what we should be giving you anyway. But when you try to put it back on us, well, what do you think? Do you think this home is good for me and my family? Typically I'm gonna put the question back on you because that's not for me to answer. Can you see yourself living here for 2 to 5 years? That's my question to you. If you can, then let's put offer in. If you can't, then let's keep it moving. So that's one of the expectations that I don't like is when they tell us that you work for me, so you're gonna do what I tell you. No, we work together in this.
I like that. It's the difference between you're not an employee, you're a professional advisor. It's just it isn't, hey, run you around and grab you by the nose. It's we're here to work together to get successfully to the finish line.
I think for me, I just like to remind them. I mean, I've had buyers who they basically they raise their own sales price. I mean, I've had people where we're okay, I want to stay under 400. I'm like, great, let's do that. And then all of a sudden we just closed on a house that was $100,000 more. So I think sometimes they might be taken as, we don't want them to get the house that they want. It's for me, it's I'm reminding you the things that you told me were non-negotiables. So if you want a 4 bedroom, but this 3 bedroom house has a pool, well, who's going to be sharing that bedroom because you said you needed 4 bedrooms? So I think being a good guide, a good consultant, a good realtor is also reminding them and keeping them on track with the goals that they told you they had in the beginning.
I like that. We actually got a couple questions here, a couple questions from the same viewer. So I will probably butcher this name, but I'm going to go with Azogi Agogo wants to know, Sam Rubin, are you licensed all over Texas? So I think the answer in terms of licensing would apply for all of Texas, but do you represent people throughout Texas?
So I cover the Dallas, Fort Worth, and surrounding metroplex. But as a licensee, yes, we can cover the whole state of Texas. But as far as competency with a realtor that you're dealing with, you want to make sure that they are competent in the area. So if I sell you a property in Houston, Texas, even though I live there, I don't live there now. I wouldn't be competent in the area because I couldn't tell you what areas are best for you, etc. So, in regards to that question, yes, us as Texas licensees can cover the whole state of Texas, but it's not in our best interest when you don't know the areas to the extent that you do where you're living at.
He has a follow-up question that's not Sam specific. So is it safe to do business with a builder that is not Better Business Bureau accredited? And like for us here in Southern California, it's all big national builders. There aren't really a whole lot of local builders. Do you have any out in the Apple Valley area, any of them that pop up, Claudia?
We actually do have a lot of non-regional or local builders. But you see a lot of them have a lot of inventory that they're building right now in our area. So I don't think a lot of people go on BBB. I think they go off of word of mouth, reviews. They go and see the work that they've done. Like in my area, I try to go to when a builder has a new spec home that they're putting out, I try to go to that one to see what plans they offer, what their pricing is like. But I think in the areas that are not so, maybe where there's more land available, they're probably going to have a wider variety of builders. It's not all going to be KB Homes or DR Horton.
And before online reviews, where everyone has Google, Zillow, Yelp, different reviews, BBB was a bigger thing. But I almost look at them like Yelp. Yelp will magically make bad reviews go away if you pay them enough in terms of your membership. The Better Business Bureau is not quite that bad, but if you Google the lawsuits they've had, also things where you get a much better rating if you're a member in good standing, paying them a lot of money.
Going back to that too, this is another way that you can tell if your agent is experienced with builders. I mean, in my area, I would say probably one of the oldest builders, or not longest, but longest longevity, is a company called Desiderata. And you could see, because I've been in the business for 20 years almost, I know what all of their plans look like. So that's another way to determine also if you're working with someone who's experienced. How well do they know these builders? Do they know you know, the thing that makes that builder stand out? Can they call one out driving down the street?
Yeah, and in regards to Better Business Bureau, I wouldn't go off of that because they have to pay for that. So many people are not. There is a free version, I believe, but in regards to like accreditation, A+, B+ rating, all that stuff like that, you're paying for that, and nobody really uses Better Business Bureau anymore. And most builders are not because they're lazy and they don't want to pay for stuff. So pay for additional items that they're already paying for. So no, BBB is not the best place to search for an accredited builder. You have to use a builder that is approved by the VA, which their process is crap too. Did I say that? Their process is not great either. But
Keeping it real.
but yeah, so so you need to use a builder that is approved by the VA, meaning they need to be on the list of approved builders, and they can get approved if they're not. But word of mouth, like Claudia said, searching through online groups on Facebook, Google, etc., trying to get the experience. Now, I will say this: many of the builders, the larger builders, will have negative reviews. They've been in business for 15 plus years, so you're gonna have some negative reviews. That doesn't mean that they're a bad builder. You have areas where they hire the worst contractors, and that's just what it is. They just have bad contractors. So that area may have been a situation where they just had bad houses. And then you have another area where they are, building great because the contractors in that area are more experienced and have better quality material, etc. So depending on the areas that you're buying in and depending on the builder, it's going to vary. So just go by word of mouth or, visit the community pool and start talking to people and see what their problems are.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So he actually followed up, Sam. He's looking for Dallas specifically. So you actually may be a match for him if he's looking for a property. And just for all of you, I'll throw this up here. If you're looking for a professional, either on the real estate or the mortgage side, wherever you are in the country, you can go out to vettedva.com. The map's on the homepage. Throw in your state, and you will find the list of vetted pros in your state. The mortgage side is really easy. Lending within the borders of the state is pretty easy. Realtor wise, it is more important that they be local and know your market and have their network there. So we are aggressively working and trying to build out that realtor network and get more vetted real estate pros so more of you can have folks local to you. But if you can't find someone in your area local to you real estate wise, reach out to someone in your state. So if you're looking in an area of Texas that Sam doesn't serve, you can give Sam a call and she's going to know real estate professionals. Same with Claudia here in California that do have that VA experience and can help you. So make sure you're using the map if you're looking for professionals. I want to circle back to that writing an offer process and kind of dig a little deeper. Claudia, you're saying, hey, I'm going to go through my whole 27-page contract. We're going to go line by line. And it makes me think when I got into this in the 90s, the client would come to the office and you would sit in a conference room and you had the fun paper that you had to press real hard on and it would make 3 copies of it for the office file. So way before DocuSign and PDFs and email and that type of stuff. But in an age where the forms are basically completed online and done through DocuSign, what does that process look like when we're getting ready to write an offer? We're not necessarily together. How are you walking your buyers through that and making sure that they understand all of those?
So we can do a Zoom meeting or Facebook if we're Facebook friends or we're connected on Facebook. But most of the time for me, it's been in my office. I'll print out a copy and we'll go through it.
So you still have clients. I mean, it's funny. I say it like I'm somewhat surprised. On the mortgage side, hundreds of clients a year, I might have 2 or 3 that ever set foot in our office, and that's including the ones that are in our city. If I'm doing a loan for someone in Sacramento, obviously they're not going to swing by the office, but I'll have people that are literally a half mile from us. They never come to the office. Everything is done through a portal, through email, through DocuSign, that fun stuff. But if you're dealing with a buyer, you have to get them in the car and have to go show them the property. So you're able to go through that. It's pretty much the same for you, Sam. You're going to go through it when you're with them, showing them properties. Not so much just having a DocuSign envelope show up with 20 something pages for them to go through.
I typically do a buyer consult before we even get into showing of the homes and stuff like that. And then after the buyer consult, I'll send them a summary of the. I used to go line by the contract with the contract, but so many people's like, can we get to the point? And so I got to the point. I send them a summary of what is the the items that I added to the contract that we discussed, and then I tell them if they have any questions, please reach out to me about certain information. Because Texas is the one that writes these contracts. I don't. I just input, the stuff that we discussed. The Texas lawyers, let me say that. So I tell them to read it, and they do. They prefer, like many of them have not wanted me to go verbatim by the contract, so I'll summarize it, and then we keep moving from there. Most of my clients are virtual Zoom. I've had a few want to meet in person, but most are by virtual.
It is great having the technology because it is still better. Like when I'm going through numbers with a client, I would much rather do it on a live call versus just saying, hey, I sent this over. What questions do you have on it? It is much easier to go pull it up on the screen, go line by line, edit it. I mean, maybe they started out looking at $500,000 homes and now they got pushed up to the 550 price range. Just being able to see that and go through that is super helpful. So using that sort of as a transition over here into fees. The big one as a buyer, buyers are sometimes confused on how you guys get paid, who's going to be responsible for that. So I kind of want to start with that and then transition into what do you guys do in terms of talking through and preparing your buyers for closing and fees and transaction costs, and how does that differ from what we on the loan side? Like for me, when I'm going through with someone, I want them to know this is what your monthly payment is going to be, and this is what you're going to come into closing with. So we have to know everything, every fee under the sun. So kind of back to the beginning, how does your guys' fee get paid? Does that impact the buyer's cash to close? And how much do you guys get involved in terms of cost? I know you're reviewing the settlement statements and looking at everything that goes into it, but how much do you talk to buyers about that versus leaving it to the mortgage professional who is literally responsible for those disclosures?
I'll go. So I am a little bit more involved than a lot of other agents because I understand the process a little bit better. And I'm nosy in regards to what these lenders are charging. I don't like for people to be taken advantage of. So I am very involved when it comes to their disclosures, closing costs. I let them know, hey, this is property taxes, insurance. When it comes to our fees as a VA loan buyer up front, I tell them, even if they're not using me when I'm going through my buyer consultation, if you use me or if you don't, regardless of what agent that you choose to use, don't allow them to tell you that you're going to pay their commission as a VA loan buyer. At this time, that is not allowed. Changes might be coming down the pipeline, but right now, it's not allowed. But I do go into detail myself about the closing costs involved because I want them to know this is what it's going to cost you to buy a home in the event that you don't have these monies. And if you don't have these monies, then where are we going to get the money from if the seller is not able to pay these costs for you? So I definitely go into detail about what is needed to be able to close on a home and the funds needed just to put an offer in on a home. So,
because I can imagine you wouldn't, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you have a vague pre-approval letter says someone can buy a $500,000 house. You spend 3 or 4 weekends out in the Dallas sun showing them homes, and then come to find out they don't have any money and no understanding of what that closing would look like. Claudia, how does that, is that pretty similar for you here? And maybe pick up on that conversation. So the buyer cannot currently under VA guidelines pay the commission. Can they pay other things, transaction coordinator fees,
No, they
admin
can't.
fees?
So for me, that is the loan officer and I do have a conversation about how much the estimated closing costs are going to be. We've sent them the property that they're going to be making an offer on. If that's a property that has higher assessments or an HOA, all of that makes a difference. So that is a conversation that I do have with the lender. And then as far as the transaction coordinator fee, some agents do charge that. It's really going to depend on the people that you're working with. Me, I don't charge that. I feel that is a business expense that I incur for being the real estate professional. So I go ahead and that is deducted from every transaction for me. I don't pass that on to the buyer. But I will say that as a listing agent, I do see buyers agents who will write it into the allocation of cost section of the offer that will say buyer. It'll be checked and it'll say TC fee, and it could be, I think the highest I saw was like $600. So in the event that I'm receiving an offer from a veteran, they're being represented by somebody else, they're using their VA loan, I will send a counteroffer to that buyer's agent and ask them to remove that. It just happened recently. And then I had to show them a screenshot or handbook where it states that they're not allowed to charge that. So,
and it's another area where, again, if your realtor's not familiar with the nuances of the VA loan process, they're not even going to know. I mean, it is something that happens out there. It's not like they're doing something illegal, but it is something that under the VA guidelines is not allowed. We're running up on about 50 minutes here. So two things. We always like to keep it to about an hour. I think we've got a bunch more stuff that we could go through, but we'll push that to a future episode. What I always like to do at the end of the hour is just go around and give each of you an opportunity to add anything that you want buyers, sellers, borrowers to know in the current market. So any last words of wisdom that you would like to share here for the week? Sam, we can start with you.
So we didn't really touch on sellers too much, but when it comes to sellers, I would just say make sure you read your listing agreement, because unlike buyers agents, we're not required, to have that. But when it comes to listing agreements, that is a requirement. So just read through your listing agreement. Make sure that you understand, the cost that is going to be for you to list with that agent, the marketing that's going to be done, etc. And then with buyers, again, read your buyer rep agreement if you're opted to sign one. Pay attention to the market. Treat your agent like a partner, and ask all the questions that you can during your transaction, and don't be afraid to think that it's a dumb question, because no question when it comes to this real estate is a dumb question, because even us as agents, we're learning something every day, and then there's so many changes to our contracts on a yearly basis that any question is allowed.
Absolutely. How about you, Claudia?
I would just say be patient, first of all, because the market is starting to get crazy again in some areas. So be patient. Gosh, you know what? I lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm going to go back and piggyback off of what Sam said. It is essential that you ask questions. We talked about a 20-page contract here. I'm going to send 20 plus pages of disclosures to you. Just like the contract on our disclosures, the majority of it is not important, but there are many, many parts of it that are. So read through all of this stuff. Ask any questions. If something doesn't make sense to you, this is a very complex process. It's not rocket science. There's no part of it that you as a consumer cannot understand. We can help you understand every last bit of it, but there's no way, even if you bought a home 3 years ago, that you can remember the way everything goes, what's normal, what's expected, what's customary in the current market. Today's market is very different than it was 3 years ago. So ask any and all questions that you would ever want to ask, and use that as a litmus test for your professionals, both on the mortgage and the real estate side. If they're blowing you off, or if they're acting like this is a nuisance to answer your questions, I would say that's probably 35-40% of our job, is just going through the questions and making sure you're comfortable with the biggest debt and the biggest purchase that you're probably ever going to make. It is unique. We talked about it earlier in the show. We don't buy things that are 70, 80, 100 years, 40 years old that other families have lived in, that have been upgraded at different times, built to different construction methods. It's just unique. You're not going to go through anything else like it in your life. So ask away and make sure your pros are happy with you asking and getting answers to those questions.
I would also add, I know a lot of times, because I see it all the time, is sometimes we have family and friends who are realtors and we want to give them the business. But honestly, if they are not experienced with VA loans, really, I would not do that. I would really seek out somebody who's experienced and who can answer all of these questions and has dealt with a variety of situations, because that this might be your first time buying a house, but somebody who's experienced has done this many times and helped many families. So sometimes you need that expertise, and sometimes you need an agent with that relationship. In my area, we're a small region, so a lot of the agents here, we know each other, and that makes a big difference when there's a multiple offer situation, especially if you have listing agents who are not familiar with how the VA loan can benefit a seller too. Somebody that has a relationship and has proven results can say, "This is how many veterans I've helped." And I've had a lot of veterans beat out multiple offer situations, not because they were the highest, but because we explained it the best. So,
No, that's a really important point that you make. Not only is it important that your realtor is a technically competent professional, the power of your network is really important. For us on the mortgage side, I'm a broker, so my network of people to broker loans to is important. Having good relationships with realtors and escrow, it's important, but it's nothing like you guys on the real estate side. Because if you have a bad reputation, there are people who just be like, well, we got two offers. They're reasonably the same. Let's work with the person that's professional, competent, on top of their transaction, gets things to us in a timely manner. So that network, that relationship is huge. And that's what I tell people. Your uncle retired 20 years ago, and he may have stayed on top of it in his easy chair, reading all of the updates and knows everything technically about doing that process. But if they don't have a great network out there, it can be the difference between getting a home and not getting a home. Like in 2008, for every buyer, there was like 150 homes in the multiple listing service for them to pick from. We are not in that market. You want to stack the deck in your favor absolutely as much as possible. And sometimes that comes down to, for you guys, just you put out to your network that, hey, I've got a buyer that needs this. Let me know if you have something coming. I'm going to say probably 20% of our buyers right now, that's how they're getting their property, is their agent's network. So it's important. There's a lot of pieces to the real estate side, and you guys are much more important than I think a lot of people give credit to. So before we wrap it up, anything else either of you ladies would like to say?
thank you for being part of the group, asking questions and sharing with other people.
Absolutely. No, the group and being able to be out and just seeing what's going through buyers, sellers, borrowers' heads in the vetted VA group is invaluable. I tell everyone, as a professional, we get as much out of it as the members do in terms of getting their questions answered, just because it uncovers things that you almost wouldn't learn any other way. So on that note, appreciate you guys being here, sharing your knowledge and wisdom and helping all of us learn. And we will be back next week. We had another comment. It was just Zogi saying that he's going to reach out to you, Sam. So he and his wife are going to reach out about potentially buying a home. But again, appreciate you guys being here. We will be back next week with another set of professionals, and we look forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.